Good evening and welcome to Inside Government, a show brought to you by Q Community College and shown on Verizon Fios as well as Spectrum, ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. This is our first day of shows for the spring 2025 semester, and this is our second Inside Government for the day. And we're delighted to have in the studio Dr. Misty Slavic, who is just completing her first 6 months in about 2 days as the new Superintendent of Schools for Auburn. We've asked her on to talk about a variety of items from the state budget and how it will impact Auburn, to cell phones, to what's going on at Herman Avenue School over the last 24 hours, as well as a number of other things that are before the district. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you again.
Yes.
You're flying solo.
I am, yes.
So, first 6 months almost. How's it going?
It's going great. A lot of surprises, a lot of things that happen, a lot of emergency things that obviously no one's prepared for in an emergency, but a lot of construction things, a lot of, those items that we're not, it's not something that you can prepare for, but when it hits, you have to
just
deal with it.
Just loving contractors right now?
Yes, sure.
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 She says with a great deal of sarcasm.
Yes.
You've been in the job long enough that you can be sarcastic about
yes.
that.
I do love our contractors. I do. I appreciate them.
So you said surprises. So what have been the biggest surprises for you?
Just a lot of, like heating, ventilation systems. We've had a lot of issues with them. Some of the parts, getting parts and obtaining parts, the world has shifted and it takes a lot longer to get parts than normally. As you may be aware, we were doing construction on our middle school, our junior high, and the front office, it was ready to have its big grand opening. It was beautifully renovated, and then a steam pipe broke and destroyed the entire front office, and it had to be redone again under an emergency project. So things like that occur.
Are those really items that are covered by insurance?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
On the non-construction side,
Yes.
let's talk about the educational side.
Sure.
Many surprises there.
I wasn't expecting to have such a large turnover in administration. That was surprising. So usually what I'm used to, administrators would stay for years and years. They moved up in a school district and then they just stayed. So it was surprising to come in and immediately be shorthanded with administration. And then everyone was trying to scramble to take up that slack.
So part of it's a domino effect
Yes.
here. So let's talk, we'll come back
Sure.
to the first 6 months in a second. Let's talk about, you made some recommendations to the Board of Education
Yes.
recently to move some people around.
I did.
For the most part, the majority of people don't know anything about them, but they do know about the domino effect at the elementary level.
Yes.
So why don't you give us an overview? What major
Sure.
changes did you need to make?
Yes. So we were looking for an assistant superintendent of personnel.
Because you were using a consultant for a
We
period.
were. Sarah Capelli ended up becoming superintendent in a different district, Waterloo.
Right.
So, which we were very happy for her and her move in her career. But at the same time, we're filling a big empty hole.
So once she left, you did have a consultant for a little bit.
Yes, we had a
period.
consultant for a little bit, had years of experience. She was wonderful to have. But in the process, we were interviewing for candidates. The candidate pool is very slim right now for educators, administrators, teachers, any component or any employee of a school district. It's very hard to find. We posted the position multiple times. Finally, our elementary principal at Herman, Kelly Garback, she applied and went through the interview process, and she was the interview committee's #1 pick. I mean, everyone was very excited to have her on board. So she joined our team and really has made, it's only been 3 weeks for her, but I have to say she jumped right in and—
Great principal.
She is a wonderful principal. So once she moved, that obviously created a little bit of a hole. In the meantime, another one of our principals at Seward had obtained a promotional position move in another district. So that was at Seward, so she was leaving. And then we were like, okay, we have a lot of shifting. What do we need? And actually, Dr. Ron Gorney said to me, I haven't been at Seward yet. I've been in every other building, but I haven't been at Seward. And I really believe that, the assistant principal, Lizzie, she can do a great job at Owasco, and I would be happy to take on Seward, which was a great thing for him to do. Very professional, because with that seasoned administrator to just walk into a building, support a brand new assistant principal, support some new staff members. It was a great move. So now Ron has now officially worked in all of our elementary buildings.
He is all 5 now.
He is, and he's doing a great job. So we're happy.
Does he
about
tell
that.
you whether he likes to be a hawk, an owl?
He will never say.
Okay.
He will never
we'll
tell
have to
you
have
that.
him on
Yes.
just to ask
you
him that.
should ask him
Yeah,
that. Yes.
So that created some other dominoes
It did. It did.
for you because you
Yes.
ended up taking the assistant principal next door at the junior high.
Well, at Owasco, Lizzie
Okay.
Malloy became the principal of Owasco when Ron moved to Seward. And then we're still looking for an assistant principal for Owasco, but right now we're chipping in. Everyone's kind of pulling in and helping whenever it's needed. But then we had the opportunity to move our junior high assistant principal, Jared Tabone, over to Herman to become, I'm thinking this because this is how long it's like puzzle pieces.
It's a map.
Jared was ready to move into his own building, so he went over to Herman and became the principal, which opened up an assistant principal position at the junior high, where we had a dean of students who was
Been promoted
to assistant principal.
Ms. Vitale.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so overall, if I'm remembering my history correctly,
Yes.
with the exception of Ron Gorney, because he's an outlier on so many different levels, in a good way.
Yes.
For the most part, this district has not had principals at all of these schools that have been stable for 2 or 3 years. Some going back, I mean, Casey and Owasco
Right.
have had massive turnover.
Yes. Genesee
over the,
as well.
And Genesee. Is it just because it is tough to retain? Or is it a more underlying issue?
From what I've seen, and remember, 2 days will be 6 months, but from the questions we have, because we always do exit interviews, we always try to see what's going on. How can we support our principals? A lot of the reasons that our principals who just left, it was all promotions. It wasn't because they were leaving because they were unhappy. It was they had an opportunity in their career to move forward, and that's what they wanted to do, and we support that. It really, I'm hoping our consistency right now, it's going to stay. I do know, as I said, my experience in education has been in the last 5 years, it's been extremely challenging to keep educators, to find educators. A lot of people left the world of education right during COVID or right following COVID, and it just seems to continue to drop off.
Any other changes you have recommended, that you recommended to the board that had to be done recently?
We moved our STEM teacher from Owasco to be the Herman assistant principal, Brad Lasagna, and he is doing outstanding.
Because Ms. Batista, you had promoted
Yes,
earlier in
yes,
the year
to Casey
down to
Park.
Casey Park to be principal.
Yep.
One viewer question was, why not wait until July?
Sure, absolutely. The longer you wait, the longer there's upheaval in a building, and we needed strong leadership. And I'm sure we're going to talk about academics in a little bit, but if you look at all the research, it's always talking about the power of strong leadership and instructional practices and leading with that confidence. And we couldn't leave our buildings unattended.
And so at this particular stage, do you see any more changes between now and July?
No, I don't.
I want to go back to the first 6 months, then we'll go to other
Sure.
fun subjects. This may have been. Was this the biggest challenge? Or what's been the biggest?
Moving the staff around?
Yes. Or what has been the biggest challenge in the first 6 months?
Sure. I don't know that the biggest challenge for me has really been learning the difference between Pennsylvania and New York ways of doing things. It's not necessarily extremely different, but the terminology is different. So things like construction, it's not a long process in Pennsylvania, but in New York, there's a system and there's so much paperwork.
So you've driven 81.
Yes, I have.
So a perfect example of the difference between New York and Pennsylvania is New York doesn't invest their money back in their roads, where I don't know that I've ever traveled through the state of Pennsylvania where there's not a construction project on
That is
81.
true. That is true.
I learned that a long time ago.
Yes.
About that.
Yes, but I mean, I would say that that's been the biggest challenge for me is just
By the way, the
learning
DOT
it.
will say that I'm wrong.
They'll come back.
But I'm
I
right.
understand. I understand. I think that that's been the biggest challenge for me. I think also just learning the culture and climate of Auburn is, when you go into the interview process and everyone says Auburn's so unique, and you're just going to find it so different in Auburn. And every job I've had, everyone's always said that. So I kind of took it like, oh, okay.
Well, we are the center of the universe, but we'll get to that.
Of course. So I live here now, so yes.
So one other building question, because you've talked about contractors,
Yes.
and you did have something occur yesterday morning at Herman Avenue.
Yes.
Because you had to come back from vacation.
Yes, unfortunately.
And what happened at Herman yesterday?
So yesterday I was called by our director of facilities, who stated that there was a smell of gas in the air outside of the building. So he immediately called the fire department and the gas company, and they came out and discovered that there was a leak in the pipe outside of the building.
Weather related? Do you know what the cause is?
No, it's not. Right now it's just a gas line that had holes in it.
So being fixed?
Yes, yes.
So you closed yesterday,
We
Monday,
did.
and today, Tuesday?
Yesterday they had to have an emergency early release, and today we were closed, yes.
And expectation that you'll...
Well, right now at 3:37, they should be testing the lines to make
Okay.
sure they're good. And if they get the all clear, then we will be good for school tomorrow.
And this says, I'm going to get to snow days in a moment.
Sure.
But
Of course.
when you close a school, an individual school versus
Sure.
a district, does that impact your 180-day?
We go by hours of how many
Okay.
hours
So what
students are in
happens-
session.
So those students are out, is that deemed just because it's a health and safety emergency, unlike
Yeah.
snow, that they won't have to make it up, or are they going to
They
have
won't have to make it up.
Okay.
And we actually overschedule our hours and our days to accommodate for emergency situations.
So, let's
Are
go
you
to
gonna
snow
ask me about
days.
snow
I
days,
am
right?
gonna say, because
Okay.
I think everyone who's ever sat in that seat
Yes.
said this is the most miserable
It's horrible.
decision, because you're never right.
That is correct.
Well, I shouldn't say never right. Half the people are mad at you, half
Yes.
the other people love that you did it. And so for you, what goes into making that decision, I'm going to close school?
So it starts, obviously, we're always looking at the weather. And I say we because it's really important to point out that it's not just me making the decision. We have a team of people that work through road conditions. We're talking to Auburn City, determining, how are we with the roads? Are they cleared? Is there any concerns that you have? I'm talking to the surrounding school district superintendents from probably about 4 a.m. Or sometimes the night before. What are you seeing? It's very hard to determine with, lake effect, where 1 minute the weather channel says, oh, you have nothing, and I look out my window and it's a blizzard, and then the next minute.
You just want to scream at that weather person,
I do.
open your window.
Yes, but I'm constantly talking to our director of facilities, as I said, superintendents. I personally drive the roads where our buses go just to see, what are the conditions like. I'm talking to our transportation department. It's a whole team
Because
of people.
there was one day where only Auburn was closed.
Yes.
But everybody else was open. There were other days where most everybody was closed and you were open.
Correct. Yeah.
And which I'm sure just pleased everyone.
No, it did not.
Okay.
But
Part
Sure.
of your issue, though, is that you have walking schools, which
That
was
is
maybe not something that we had 20 years ago, 2 decades ago.
Yes.
So first of all, for what are walking schools and which ones are they?
Yes, so we have Genesee is considered a walking school. Casey Park, I believe, is considered a walking school. Well, we have walkers in every building.
Right.
And we have about...
So that's a factor.
It is a huge factor, yeah. And I looked at the data. We have over 1,000 students who walk to school. That's a lot of students who walk. And other schools don't have that, and they also have door-to-door pickup from buses. We don't have that either. We have students who have to walk a block or two to get to them.
So traditionally, it has been that the state of New York requires, I know you said hours, but traditionally it's been 180 days.
Yes.
Is that still the benchmark?
It is. We generally have an 187-day calendar. You can use 4 of your conference days as considered instructional days. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So our calendar is actually pretty good.
So at this stage, how many snow days have you used?
We have used, I believe it's 3 or 4 at this point, but we have 4 left. Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
we have,
unless we get a real brutal set of days, you're
we're good.
okay. So let me give you the reverse, and that
Yes.
is that look what's going on up at Oswego, and I
I
know they're talking about remote at this stage because they are at their limit or they've gone over. First of all, does this, and I know you're new to New York
That's
State,
okay.
does the state give any dispensation because of weather events of that nature?
No, not
Okay.
really. I mean, unless it's considered a state emergency, then it's different.
So for your goal is to obviously keep students in school, but from a financial standpoint, there is a financial difference between doing a 2-hour delay and calling off school for the full day.
What do you mean by a financial?
So it does not count as an off day. If students appear in the building, that's still an aidable day.
Yes.
From the state of New York.
Yes.
If you close for the day, that is not.
It's not, but again, if we meet that threshold of 180 days in the hours, then it
Okay.
is aidable.
All right.
Yes.
So at this stage, you think you're okay? You're not looking at.
I feel like you're jinxing me right now.
No,
because
well, no. The reason I'm asking you this
Yes,
because
no,
I
we're
know
good.
I think it's only because it's in the news where they're talking about
Yes.
looking at shrinking the next break or going extra days or giving up teacher training days. That's all.
I will say I inherited a wonderful calendar from Jeff Piazzolo, so he did a great job with that.
So I want to ask about a couple things. There's been some news stories about graduation rates. We'll get to
Sure.
that in a second. But how big an issue is absenteeism?
It's still a huge issue.
Okay.
About 25 to 30% of our population is absent, on a given day, and that's K to 12. We put in so many things into place, but the only success, one of the areas that we are finding success is when our principals and our social workers and our counselors go door to door to get kids to come to school. But obviously when our
That's
principals...
massive staff resources.
It is, it is. And when we were so shorthanded before, we weren't able to do that. But now that we're fully staffed, we're able to start picking that up again. But it's a huge issue. And when the weather's bad, obviously, if it snows or if there's a bad rainstorm, less
So when you say
attendance.
25 to 30%, is that the same students for the most part?
Yes, yes.
Because I will say, the middle school the other day, you posted those who had perfect attendance.
Yep.
I see, whether it's you or Chris Shearer who does your media,
Yep.
you're promoting good behaviors.
Yes.
This is what, whether it's grades or things to get that out. I'm assuming you're doing that at all levels.
Yes, we do.
So that 30%, is that impacting graduation rates as well?
Oh, absolutely. Because if kids can't come to school and kids can't learn, they can't pass their classes and they can't pass their tests.
I want to go to graduation rates, but before I do that,
Sure.
you sent out an email, or I think it was an email, or somebody sent me a screenshot. There's nothing you can say doesn't get out.
I know.
We talk about student absenteeism, but you were worried about staff absenteeism. How big
Absolutely.
is it? When you say staff, is that across all boards, whether it's instructional,
The whole thing, all staff members.
cafeteria, transportation? How big an issue is that?
You know what? It's gotten much better. What we were
Because
seeing.
you said something?
I don't know if that was it necessarily. I've tried to do more positive things, and not only the email, but we started to do an awarding of staff members who have perfect attendance for the month. So we
Okay.
give, I buy them a free lunch for them and a colleague, and we do a profile on them on all of our social media, to celebrate them. They're fatigued. It's truly fatigue. It's a lot what they're doing, and I get it. My bigger concern was the consistent absences of every Friday, every Monday, or trying to extend vacations, those types of things.
Which is a rule has not been,
Contractually.
contractually they can't do.
Contractually, they cannot do it, but if they're sick, there's nothing that we can do about that. Unless it's a consistency or a pattern, then we can do some background research. So I was just reminding them that every time they're absent, it definitely impacts instruction, it impacts student relationships.
Well, you have to also, it's budgetary because you have to call somebody
100%.
in.
Yes.
So let's talk, two reports were recently released. We should say you were not with the district for the periods these were, but you have to deal with these issues.
I do.
So let me deal with the first one was a report 2 weeks ago about 670 districts on the 2024 graduation rates. How did Auburn do?
We didn't do so great. No,
So you were
no.
624th out of 670 districts. So Auburn was in the bottom 7%.
Yes.
With a 75% graduation rate. Do you and the board have a plan to address this?
We've been, working since I've been here, and I know that Jeff was working really hard on it as well. And I've taken some of the plans that he started and really carried that into this school year. But the board and administrative team, we're constantly looking for strategies to increase that. Really looking to work with our school counselors on aligning what our students need and providing those interventions that they need to succeed and to make that graduation rate. I will honestly say the biggest obstacle we have is just the attendance, getting them to come to school.
So the other report that came out was this English language arts proficiency. Is that for high school students?
Generally, I'm not sure which report you're looking at, but
it's a New York State report.
Yeah.
So this one had a ranking, Auburn was 515th out of 634, so in the bottom 20% again. A 78% proficiency rate, with more than a third of the districts were over 90%. Auburn was not.
That's correct.
So what is going on in that particular area? Is it the same underlying issue?
I don't want to keep pointing to attendance because, again, I've only been here a few, and I hate using that as excuse, but we're really digging into the data to, right now we're running pilots on some of our resources to support our instruction. Next year, we're focusing entirely on Tier 1 instruction and what that looks like in our classrooms.
What is Tier 1 instruction?
So generally you have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is large group instruction, Tier 2 is your smaller group, and Tier 3 is your more one-to-one interventions. We're really taking a good look at how we're providing our instruction and engagement.
With a third of your district, a third to a fourth of your district out, the only thing that comes to mind is the little rascals and the truant officer.
Yes.
But are we back to the point where you almost have to hire people just to do truancy?
We're not at that point yet. We do have a lot of support and a lot of resources in play, especially now, as I said, we're fully staffed. But it's even if we go door to door at times, they don't answer the doors, they don't get their mail. We have a very high number of homeless students too, who are very transient. So it's just challenging all around. I mean, really the biggest thing is getting parents support and understanding of how important it is.
Are you surprised at how disengaged some of those parents are?
It does surprise me, but I've seen it not just in Auburn.
Okay.
So it's not a new thing.
So Governor released her budget.
Yep.
This is your first state budget process.
Yep.
Auburn didn't make out badly.
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Okay. So give me the half full or half empty.
Sure. So I will.
Glass is leaking and it's
Sure.
dirty.
So we're very grateful because many districts surrounding us had a decrease in their funding. We did not. But what it comes down to is truly like a 1% increase. I know that the papers and everything that's showing says about a 7%. But when you look at how they move the numbers around, our needs are highest in our special education.
So the inflation rate is higher than your aid rate.
Pretty much. Not only that, but our needs are very high, and they move the money around.
And did they address, because this has been ongoing, because I apologize to voters, viewers who have heard this word too many times, foundation aid.
Yes.
So did they make any adjustments on that front?
Not yet, not yet. They did release their report and talking about what that's going to look like. Is that what you're talking about, the new formula?
So the formula,
Yeah,
so
the new
no formula changes have occurred that were resulting in Auburn getting more money.
Correct.
As of this stage. Some districts in the past, and I know most people have mentally gone past COVID, but we're worried about state aid because they put all all this aid had come in for COVID, and there were reductions. Are you concerned about any of that at this particular stage?
The federal funding leaving from COVID? Absolutely. I think we all are. But
and how do you make up those contingencies?
we were very good, and I say we, but it was Jeff's group and business managers at the time and the school board themselves were very good at planning and utilizing those funds in areas that we could essentially eliminate, like extra tutoring programs or extra things that we were able to add in during COVID.
So Tessa Crawford, who is your
Yes.
business manager, you two will be here in April to talk about your proposed budget, but where are you in your process now? Because I know you have a board meeting
We do.
tonight as we
Yes.
tape on Tuesday.
We have a finance workshop tonight at the end of the board meeting just to review final numbers comparison from last school year this school year to next school year, what that looks like. And that's really where we're at.
So where you are today in relation to the state budget numbers, which usually do not go down, legislature usually adds. Quick lesson in politics in New York.
Sure.
What is your gap right now between revenue and expenses as you look at the new year?
We're probably about $2 million, $3 million a gap.
So does that mean utilizing all fund balance, or does that mean a combination of using fund balance and a tax increase?
Right now, that's the decision that we have to come to. We don't have our tax cap information as of yet, too, so we don't have that information. So that's causing a little bit of an issue. So that was delayed.
When will the state give you that?
We're actually just waiting on some final financials based upon emergency construction projects and our funding that we're going to get in.
In the past, even though Auburn has seen jumps in aid, they have still gone with a tax increase as a policy. Is that something there is a discussion about right now at the district
We
level?
haven't even had the chance to discuss it. And I don't believe there's a policy. I just believe it's more of something that they've always done and believed in.
What's the district's policy about cell phones?
That students are not allowed to have them out, K to 12.
And do you like that policy as it currently stands?
I do. I think we need to be a little tougher on it, but I do like it. It's nice to see kids actually paying attention and focused in class.
So Governor Hochul has taken a new, an interest in cell phones of late. Has she proposed anything specifically that's different than what Auburn does?
Not at this point. I mean, I know there's some discussions about having pouches or having strategies, you know, the pouches to put the cell phones in.
Who will pay for that, by the way?
That would be the district.
Okay.
Yes.
Would that be an unfunded mandate?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. So finally, I want to ask you, school board elections are up in May. This is the time people think about whether running for re-election. Who's up this year?
Danielle, Dan, and the last name left me.
Jim Vargason.
Thank
Jim
you,
Van
Jim.
Arsdale,
Yes,
sorry.
Jim.
Jim Vargason
Yep.
used to be DA. Danielle Woods,
Yep.
Dan Lovell, and Jim Van Arsdale. Do you expect all three to run for re-election?
I mean, I hope they do.
Okay.
but-
Do you know of any other candidates at this stage? I know they can't pick up petitions from Shelley Major yet at the
Sure.
district office, but are other people coming to the meetings that you expect that other people will run?
I have not seen anyone come to the meeting.
Because we haven't had really competitive election. We've
Sure.
had challengers, but this studio used to fill up with 9 candidates at a
Oh,
time.
wow.
Now we're lucky if we get 3 or 4. And sometimes the board has to appoint somebody from the public
Right.
on that. My last question to you is, what would you like to see in somebody running for school board?
Somebody who is honest and whose focus is on our students, but who's also supportive of the direction that we're trying to go and is able to listen and distinguish between gossip and fact. That's really important. You know, a lot of times the gossip gets a hold in the community and it becomes fact in some people's ears, and it's really not. And I greatly appreciate our board now where they ask, they say, what is true? And so we were able to provide that information to them. So I'd love to be able to continue that relationship.
Should somebody be a parent? Should they be a taxpayer? Should they just be interested, or combinations of all three?
I think combinations of all three are always, you know, I've worked with school board members from all aspects who have kids in the district, who don't, who are business owners, who are not, you know, and it's really just about that, you know, why do they want to be on the school board? Is it for good intentions? Then we want you.
Versus an agenda.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Other than the agenda that it's to benefit the school district.
Correct.
All right. Our guest has been Dr. Misty Slavic.
Yes.
Slavic. We want to thank you for being here.
Thank
I
you
know
for
you're
having
not
me.
feeling well, but we appreciate you
Thanks.
coming into the studio. You're going to be back in a couple months
Yes.
with Tessa Crawford. Talk about the budget as you go through. You have some public hearings and things in between, and we look forward to having you back here in a
Yes,
couple
thank
of
you.
weeks.
Thanks for having me.
Again, our guest has been Dr. Misty Slavic, who has been here for just about 6 months, heading the Auburn School District, and we look forward to having her back here in late April. We'll be back on Thursday with Assemblyman John Lamondis. We'll be asking him about that New York State budget and how it affects Auburn, because Auburn is solely contained in his assembly district. Next week we'll have Butte County Legislative Chair Jonathan Anna will be here, as well as Jeff Ludwig for a different show from the Seward House. And next Thursday we'll be asking both of these individuals about foundation aid and state financing of education. We'll start with Assembly Minority Leader Will Barkley, who will be in the studio, and then that will be followed by Senator Rachel May. In the coming weeks, besides the discussions on budgets and the school forum, we'll have City Manager Jeff Dygert, Assistant City Manager Jennifer Haynes in, as well as representatives from the County Health Department to talk about some of the things that they're working on. If you have some thoughts for guests or for questions for guests, you can send them at cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. Hope you have a great 2 days and see you back in the studio with the Assemblyman on Thursday.